Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Committee members present this evening, Councilors Boschman, Van Hazinga, myself, Councilor Di Natale, and Councilor Cruz. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. The public has been advised to contact the City Clerk's office regarding any comments from the public of no more than 2 minutes. There have been no submitted or prepared statements, and no one is on Zoom at this time to speak. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and you may speak on it for no more than 2 minutes. This public comment period would be for anyone who's not a department head or who's not part of a group for a specific petition. This would be the general public. And I don't see anybody standing to speak beyond that. So we will move on to our agenda. First item, 02823, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant in the approximate amount of $27,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to continue to provide residents with more robust information about waste disposal and recycling, purchase additional carts for the curbside program, expand the current program, and reduce, reuse, and recycle in school cafeterias. We have the Director of Public Health, Steve Curry, here.
Good evening, councilors. Councilors, this is an accumulating grant. I believe we've accumulated several years' worth. This is the grant that actually funds our trash app for residents to use. There are about 9,000 residents signed up on the trash app. So that has been a successful program. Some of the funding that is new this year with this grant that we will be exploring, we will be looking at expanding our household hazardous waste days at the landfill. That is now a fundable project. We are also looking at our mattress issue in the city. This year they're allowing us to contract with a mattress recycler so that we can handle the funding for the business, which in turn hopefully reduces costs for the disposal of mattresses. As you know, the mattress ban does not allow us to put mattresses in our landfill, so we will be exploring a contract with that. Something else we'll be looking at is one of the new things of the grant encourages reduction in school cafeterias for utensils and trays and such. So the grant allows the purchase of dishwashers or repair. So something to look at there. And there's also education, which we often explore for our multifamilies, which often is the problem with our contaminated recycling numbers. But as I stated, it's an annual grant, and those are some of the issues that are new and that we will be hopefully funding and exploring and then funding.
Mr. Curry, on the mattress removal, can you repeat again? This is to enter into a contract with, is it Tough Stuff or anybody?
If that's what the purchasing laws allow, I mean, they are our local business, so obviously that would be the ideal situation. And the residents can utilize something in their own city, but would have to go through purchasing laws, provided that's amenable.
So right now, it's just a matter of a resident having to directly contact a vendor who does mattress removal and disposal.
That is correct.
And so what this will do in bringing the city back in involvement, what would the city be contracting with this vendor to do?
So we would pay for the disposals through the contract, and the residents would in turn have to reimburse us for the disposal. And the idea there is to try and reduce the price of disposal.
Okay. So the city would pay for the disposal cost.
The city would pay for a per price per unit
Yeah.
mattress.
Okay, they would pay for the disposal cost.
Yeah. And then we in turn would seek that fee from the residents.
From the resident, which would in
Similar to
turn...
what we do to bulk items right now.
Okay, which would in turn hopefully decrease the cost charged to the city by the contractor.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Right
okay.
now, to get something collected is somewhere around $60. So we're hoping to get that much more reduced.
I recall from my own personal experience, I think it was $16
For
before
bulk
this
item,
law
yeah.
took...
It's actually
yeah.
17 now. It goes up
17.
50 cents annually.
So
but,
that's a-
17, but a mattress now is a waistband, so
Yep.
it cannot be collected as part of the bulk item process.
But with the new law from the state and the new process, the fee has technically gone up by triple, because now we
has,
have to...
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Andy, you want to talk?
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the Trash app is a great tool, and I encourage any residents who have questions to sign up and use it. I think it's something as simple as you can't remember if it's a recycling week or not. It's really easy to put it in, and that helps a great deal. Very glad to hear about the expansion of the mattress program. I think that's a great need. We've always faced trouble with dumping in the city, but particularly since the mattress ban and even before that, the frequency of mattresses that I see in my neighborhood has gone up significantly, and they linger,
our
and
mattress
nobody wants to
factory.
take them. And so if we can try to do something to get those off the streets, I think there'll be a great benefit to the city. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman?
Couple of things. Do you think, is it worth this city council to put a change in an ordinance in there that if you sell mattresses in the city of Fitchburg, that you have to take the old ones as you deliver the new ones to the party's house and take them with you? Like they do with a TV sometime, I mean a refrigerator or a stove. If you buy it and you have somebody deliver it, they take the old one with them. So this way here, we won't find them on the sides of the street like we have been. Even without the new rules, we still find them on the sides of the road.
That's the whole idea of the state's vision for recycling and trash reduction. It does raise prices for purchasing things, and there's a lot of items, waistband items, that would be effective for. It's not a bad idea to explore, but I don't think we have very many mattress salesmen in the city at the moment that we're really going to make that much of a difference.
I really don't know how many we got, but I do know one thing. As a taxpayer, and if I follow the rules, and I call you up, or I even bring it down and pay myself, and then all of a sudden I drive around, and there's one on the corner of Federal Street and Clegon Street, now I'm paying for that one. That's what I look at. Now I'm obeying the law over here, and I pay my fair share here, but now I'm paying for the parties that just dump the stuff there out of my taxes because you won't collect that money. The DPW is going to go and pick it up, and now we got to pay for it. So we're paying twice, and that's the only reason why I asked. And I don't like paying twice. I like paying
Anything
once.
happen with televisions, computer monitors, yard waste? Same idea.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to ask you, because I read your thing here, you say you use some of this money to go around and buy new carts. How many times do you go around? Does your Board of Health people go around and check the carts to see if they're really bad and damaged? Because I've seen a lot of them are cracked and broken, and a lot of people don't know that they can get new ones if they call up.
The crew does explore. I'm not going to say they're terrific at it, and Waste Management does report broken barrels, but I encourage folks, if they have a broken cart, you can apply for it online and notify us of the broken cart, and we can either repair it or replace it. Most cases, we can repair it.
Okay. And then my final question to you. Underneath the recycling, even I, with the app, have a hard time to understand what's recyclable and what's not recyclable. Now, I would presume that come Christmas time and you got wrapping paper, it's recyclable. But then if you look on the app, no, it's not recyclable. So you say to yourself, paper, you think, but a lot of people don't have it because you said there's only 9,000 out, 9,000 people on the app. My question to you, I really believe that, because I went down to MMA, then they claim we weren't doing that good of a job. Have we done a better job on the recycling? Because we do take a lot more waste than we do recycling. Is that true?
We're accepting about 10,000 tons of waste a year. Since the barrel system, that number's been cut in half. It was upwards of 17 and 18,000 tons a year. Recycling went from about 800 to 1,000 tons back in 2012 to it's actually tripled. So the barrel system within itself that was implemented in 2012 took care of that issue. Now, I encourage you to use the Recollect Waste Wizard. As you stated, wrapping paper is, there are a lot of items that can, such as wrapping paper, that contain wax on it that is not recyclable. Recycling is only as good as the market for resale is.
Yeah, I understand
If
that.
there's somebody that can utilize wrapping paper, then there would be a market for it, but.
No, okay, I just wanted to know because I really thought we can do a lot better job because I know when I drive around, and I drive around quite a bit, and I look, sometimes I do see in the recyclable plastic. And I said, oh my God, here we go.
Recycling
I
is
even tell my
complicated.
tenants, plastic, don't put plastic in there.
The idea here is to make it less complicated, because it's very complicated.
All right. Okay, that's it, I make it, unless,
Councilor
okay, never
Cruz?
mind.
Yeah, just one final question. So this grant will be used to pick up the mattresses that have been abandoned and ditched?
It would be part of a contract, yes.
Okay, because that's certainly probably one of my biggest constituent concerns is the mattress and the dumping, particularly like multi-families, like you said, with landlords who aren't as attentive
That
as
will
they
be
should
the first thing we explore.
Okay, thank you.
We've actually already explored it.
Make a motion, we accept?
Motion made and seconded to accept 02823. There are no objections. It is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
2923, order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $60,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to fire, equipment, and repair, gas and oil. Chief Suarez.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, councilors. Thank you all for your time. So I'm here to request appropriation of $60,000 for the gas and oil line item for the Fitchburg Fire Department. This increase is due to a few factors. The main reason is the significant high prices of fuel, and not only the high prices, but the sustained high prices since last year. We're averaging about $8,500 a month, where 2 years ago it was about $4,500. We had a peak in July, which was over $10,000 for fuel. We tried to prepare for this last year. As you know, when we prepare these budgets, we start in January, crunch the numbers in February, and try to ratify everything by April. At that time, we thought the prices were high then. They were about $3.50 a gallon compared to $2.50 from the previous year. And now we're talking about $5.50. That's where it's hovering, and that's where it's staying. We've also increased our run call volume by about 12% from 2 years ago. We increased 6% per year. So that's another reason we're just going on more calls, using the trucks more frequently. So for those reasons, our line budget item for fuel is almost depleted. It'll be depleted by the end of February when we pay January's bill. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Council Boschman.
Do we get a discount? Do you buy from one supplier in Fitchburg? And do we get a discount?
We do not.
We don't get a discount?
No.
We just go to I'll use Monterey, so-and-so, just use so-and-so, can't use names.
So the way that-
So-and-so.
Yeah, so the way that we do it is we're not tied to any one station. We use any station that's available. And that's due to sometimes a great example is the old Montoris on Main Street.
Yeah.
At one point, they didn't have any fuel. They weren't getting any deliveries for 2-3 months, so we can't be tied to just one station. What we use is a gas card, and we're able to use any facility that's in Fitchburg or anywhere in the state, actually.
Well, the only reason why I asked you that, because I remember my son buys his heating oil, and if you bought it by a certain supplier and you buy so much,
Yeah.
you get a discount.
But we do get a discount in price because we use the low sulfur off-road vehicle, which we're allowed to. So we do get a price cut in that, but there's no other discount.
All right, that's all I asked. Make a motion, we accept?
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Just real quick, so, I mean, over the past year, since the spike in fuel costs, the price of gasoline has stabilized and come down, but just diesel refuses to
It's
drop.
mostly the diesel, yeah. We're using about 1,500 gallons a month. That's with gasoline also, but it's a majority of it is the diesel. These trucks, they're just not that fuel efficient. They get anywhere from 6 to 9 gallons, 6 to 9 miles per gallon. So they're not made to be fuel efficient, unfortunately.
Well, they're big trucks.
Yeah.
It's a lot to
And,
move.
we've had 12 major incidents too since July 1st. We were in Ashby helping them on mutual aid for 3 days there. And when you have them running that long, that's just a ton of fuel that they use.
Okay, thank you very much.
Make a motion, we accept?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to accept 2923. There are no objections. It is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, councilors.
03023, in order that there be and hereby is transferred from within $6,000 from Parks Personal Services Summer Help and credited to Parks Personal Services Overtime. Commissioner Erickson.
Good evening, councilors. I'm here before you tonight to request that we transfer internally $6,000 from our summer help line item in the budget to our parks overtime line item in the budget. This is a result of not having summer help this past year in the early part of FY23. We expect a similar effort at the end of FY23 for spring cleanup, and so we're doing this in advance of having to undertake that effort. So our parks guys essentially had to pick up the slack for not having that summer help available for us.
When you say that the summer help wasn't available, do you mean at all, or it wasn't as much as you guys expected to have? Because I know you were having trouble hiring people.
We advertised and didn't get any applicants, so we weren't able to hire anyone, unfortunately.
Okay, so hopefully that will change this coming fiscal year with I know there's an ordinance right now before us to raise the pay,
Right.
to incentivize people to do the summer help. It certainly isn't a budgetary issue, because I know in the last 5 years, the summer help budget has tripled. But no one's interested in doing the work. So we're going to try to raise the rate. So,
I think you're absolutely right. I think raising the rate will help, and I think advertising a little bit more than we have in the past will help. We've got a new rec director on board that's got a fantastic idea to reach out to schools for some of these summer help jobs, and I think we're going to explore that a little bit more so than we have in the past.
Council Boschman.
Are we going to advertise early, or are we going to wait to the end of June to advertise?
We're going to advertise a lot earlier. Right now, we're waiting on the ordinance change that Councilor Dintelli just mentioned. So that's been submitted to City Council. It needs to go to Legislative Affairs Committee, and then it requires 2 votes of the City Council. So we're anticipating it having final approval early March. And we've got job descriptions ready to go. As soon as that's approved, we can basically change the salary and then get them out on the streets. So
Okay.
that's the goal for this year, advertised in a timely fashion.
All right. I'll make a motion, we accept?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to accept 3023. There are no objections. It is accepted. Thank you.
Councilors.
3123, order that there be and hereby is transferred the sum of $400,000 from snow and ice removal, reserved for snow and ice removal, and credited to the following Department of Public Works snow and ice accounts. Equipment rental, $100,000, salt, $300,000. Commissioner.
So we have not had a very difficult winter yet so far, but we have had a number of small icing events, small and snowstorms, so we've had to spend a considerable amount of money. So the request here is for $400,000 to be credited to the snow and ice removal account to round out the winter, essentially. So we anticipate spending approximately what we did last year, which was roughly $1 million, and this will help get us to that point. So I know Councillor Boschman's going to ask about the salt shed. Salt shed is full right now, so we've got some in reserve. but we're expecting some winter weather between now and, the end of the official winter season. So I believe Auditor Brooks has provided you with a summary of our expenses to date through the snow and ice removal account. So that's available. You can see that the amount that we spent is very similar to what we spent last year. So we're anticipating our total spend rate at the end of the year to come out approximately equal to, hence the reason for asking for this $400,000.
Yeah, the average amount we've spent is $941,000. How much of that, so right now we're at 401. No, I'm sorry. Right now we're expended 548 with this new balance. So this whole 400,000, 440,000, or 400,000, so we've consumed everything, the 550. We've consumed that fully.
Correct.
So this 440 is extra, beyond that. Because sometimes we'll get a request for an increase, and some of that's already been encumbered. So you're already at the 550 limit.
And I do just want to point out, too, the difference in salt that we pay per ton this year is significantly higher than last year. So last year we were paying $64.40 per ton. This year it's $77.28 per ton. So it's almost a $13 difference per ton. So a big expense right there. Obviously, we had an event last night, just a very mild snow and ice, freezing rain, but we had to have guys out there putting down salt. So,
According to my weather app, there won't be another freezing rain event or snow until 12 days from now. So
I hope you're right.
we're getting closer to March, but then again, it's New England. We may get a massive nor'easter in March. I don't know, but I'm always waiting because, a less expensive snow and ice year means no free cash needed for it, which is always a bonus. So, Councilor Van Hazinga.
So I know you're continuing to clean up around the city from that ice storm a couple weeks ago where we lost a lot of trees and limbs going down. Is that ongoing cost reflected in these numbers here, or are those coming out of the regular DPW budget?
So that's coming out of the regular DPW budget. Essentially, we've got 2 crews out there every day, and we have since that storm occurred. I believe it was on the 23rd. And we're tackling the city in a clockwise order, starting with South Street and going around and making sure we clear everything that's come down within the right-of-way and then some. So that's being accounted for kind of across our normal operating budget through DPW and not necessarily this snow and ice account.
Mm-hmm. So at the initial storm, I'm sure your first priority was to get the trees out of the road, off lines, things like that. So now, as residents look at those big branches, at the edge of the road and stuff like that, they can, understand that the crews are making their ways around. They'll be there as soon as they can to get them.
Correct. Yep. And if there's an area that we've already been through and missed, I recommend that you encourage your constituents to call DPW, and we'll make sure to go back and address those issues.
All right. Thank you very much.
Councilor Boschman.
Oh, it's okay. You answered. He answered the question.
Okay.
All right, thanks. I make a motion to accept. There was
Second.
A motion made and seconded to accept 3123. There are no objections? It's accepted. 3223, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grant in the approximate amount of $109,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to develop a nature-based solutions to stormwater issues in the area north of the western end of Main Street.
So this is a grant that we applied to through the EOEEA's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. And we received the grant in the amount of $109,000. And the goal of this grant was to develop stormwater solutions within the area of the next combined sewer separation project that's going to be going to construction this year. So as you know, when we separate combined sewers, you take the stormwater out of the sanitary sewer and you put it in its own dedicated line. So we need to find a way to treat and otherwise manage that stormwater. So we applied for this grant to help offset some of the design costs that are required for that effort. So we were lucky to get $109,000 from the EEA for this purpose. And so I'm before you tonight to ask to accept the grant and allow us to expend those funds for that design effort.
When is the sewer separation on Main Street starting? I know you said this year. Do you have an exact month?
So we're planning to bid it out within the next 2 or 3 months. It'll probably start somewhere in June or so by the time we onboard a contractor and go through the whole contract startup process. So the first area that we're targeting is the north of the western end of Main Street. So it's Ashburnham Hill Road, essentially over to Prospect Street. So the second phase of that downtown combined sewer separation project will be from Prospect Street over to approximately, I guess, Blossom Street, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Okay.
And that will start in FY24, so next construction season.
Okay. Council Boschman?
Can you tell me, what's the urban heat?
So there have been a lot of recent studies that show in areas where you have a large amount of impervious area, so pavement, rooftops, concrete sidewalks, the reflective surface basically creates an additional ambient air temperature above and beyond just surrounding areas that are otherwise vegetated. So if you introduce green infrastructure into some of these areas that are impervious, you see a reduction in overall heat during the summertime. So that reduces the impacts to residents, cooling costs, makes it warmer and more enjoyable outside. So the goal here is to add that type of green infrastructure to both treat stormwater, but also to reduce that ambient air temperature across these areas that are very urban and otherwise impervious.
Okay, because I didn't know what it was, that's why I asked.
It's not something that we specifically targeted with the grant, but it's a co-benefit of some of the stormwater treatments that we're trying to design through this effort.
Now, I know on the next one here, you're going to be talking about the next one, 243,000. My question for you on this, when we talk about the stormwater, basically we're talking about MS4, aren't we, on this too?
Yes, so what we're doing with this grant checks off a lot of boxes that the EPA has for our stormwater permit. They like to see green infrastructure. They like to see us moving towards that design approach. So every year we submit an annual report to the EPA to summarize our compliance with the permit and all of the efforts that we've undertaken. So this is going to be a major helpful thing for us to include in that report to the EPA.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I was reading some of it I understood, and I know it's way over my head. I'll be the first one to tell you. Are we going to meet the deadline? It says here on this one here, we got to have it all done by July 31st of 23. And we're already in, April, March, February, middle of February, and we still got winter months, so you really can't really see that much underneath the snow layers. So will we meet the requirements? Because even on the other one, on 143, it specifies by a certain date.
Right. So we've already started looking at some of this stuff, so we're in a good position to finish it by the deadline, yes.
Okay, so that's it. All right. I got no more questions unless somebody else does. Make a motion, we accept?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 3223. If there are no objections, it's accepted. 3323, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Mass Division of Ecological Restoration Culvert Replacement Municipal Assistance Grant in the approximate amount of $143,500 for the purpose of designing 2 replacement culverts along Ashby West Road.
So this is a grant through the Division of Ecological Restoration that we were awarded in the amount of $143,500 to design 2 replacement culverts along Ashby West Road. And this is on the end of Ashby West closest to Ringe Road. So I don't know if you're familiar with that particular road, but if you're driving along, there's 2 culverts in series right where Ashby State takes a hard bend and then heads uphill towards Ringe Road. One of the culvert crossings has a railing with a heart on it, so that's going to be one of the ones that we're designing a replacement for, and the other one's just down the road in between there and Ringe Road. So they convey Falula Brook, which is tributary to Level Reservoir. So the goal here is to meet the Massachusetts stream crossing standards, which is helpful with wildlife passage, and it provides ecological benefits, but it'll also provide an improvement in water quality to Level Reservoir. So there's a co-benefit there for the Water Division as well. So we're asking that you approve acceptance of this grant and allow us to expend the funds for the design.
We're going to meet the deadline on this one here? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, Council Boschman.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know he raised his
I
hand.
didn't recognize you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll let the junior counselor talk before the senior counselor.
Oh, thank you. No, no, I'm not talking. You spoke out of the blue,
Oh,
so
all right.
you have the floor, sir.
Oh, okay. Are we going to meet the deadlines on this?
Yes. So
We are gonna
we've
be-
already done the survey prior to the snowfall, so the engineering company has all of that survey data. So once this is approved, they're going to begin the design, and it should be a relatively quick effort, a couple of months.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, according to what I read, I didn't read it all on this one either, but I read some of it, most of it, we get a chance to collect almost 2 times as much money from this and Anita grant. I figure we can probably almost get $300,000 if we meet their criterias. Am I reading that right? They said they go above the amount of the grant, over $143,000, as long as if we do go over the grant and we submit our proper paperwork in time, that they would cover it. And then they also said they would give you an additional, according to what I read, if I'm making a mistake the way I read it, an additional $18,000 in the APR funds from the state.
So I'm not too familiar with that. We developed a scope and a cost for the design that matches this $143,500, and our goal is to hit that number. I'd hate to ask the state for money that we don't necessarily need for this project. If we end up going above and beyond and the state reimburses us, that's fantastic. But my goal as project manager here is to keep on budget and schedule. So the $143,500 is the number that we're shooting to hit, and
Okay.
nothing more.
All right.
The goal here, too, is to go for construction funding during the next round of grant funding under the same program. So once this design's complete, to submit another grant application so that we can actually build the design that we're able to produce under this grant here.
Councilor Cruz?
So the 143 and change will cover the cost of the work that we need to do first? There's no additional funds from the city?
For the engineering design, correct. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yep,
then-
there's no match required for this particular grant program.
Okay. And then the follow-up that needs to be done after the design, are we more likely to get the grant because we've already started the process?
That is one of the things they include in their ranking when we submit an application, if there's already been an engineering design done, if it's been done underneath this grant program. So I believe if we're able to complete this, we are in a better position to get that construction funding through the same grant program.
Okay. Thank you. You yield the floor.
Councilor Van Huizingen?
Do you have a rough estimate of what the actual cost of construction for the culverts will be?
I don't right now. Just ballpark off the top of my head, I would estimate somewhere around $750,000. And that's just a really rough number based on my experience.
I think it's great that you can go through these grant programs because, if it's a $750,000, another $150 for the design, and we're looking at close to $1 million. And I think if we can get the state to put that money forward and pay for it, that's fantastic. So I applaud your office's efforts to apply and get these grants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I make a motion to approve 3323.
I'll even second that one.
Motion made and seconded to approve 3323. If there are no objections, it's approved. 3423, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Dam and Seawall Repair or Removal Grant in the approximate amount of $38,925 for the purpose of said grant, which is to complete the design work and file permits for the removal of McTaggart's Pond Dam.
So as you are probably aware, we went through an alternatives analysis a number of years ago, actually when Mr. Laxa was commissioner, to figure out how to handle McTaggart's Pond Dam. It's a dam that the city owns through tax title that's in relatively poor condition. It was deemed unsafe at one point a number of years ago. The pond was drained, and since we've been trying to figure out exactly how to handle what to do with it. So with this alternatives analysis, we went through the finances, the cost, et cetera. We determined that the best thing for the city would be to remove the dam itself. So since then, we've undertaken an effort to design and permit the removal of the dam, and that was funded through an earmark that our Mayor DiNatale made while he was in office as a representative. And that's been extremely helpful to get to the point that we're at right now. But as we're going through this design effort, there was a shortfall of the amount of this grant for additional sediment sampling in the final structural design for the dam removal. So we applied for a grant through the Dam and Seawall Repair and Removal Program to obtain the amount of funding needed to cover this gap, and that's why I'm before you right now. So I'd like to seek your approval to accept and expend these funds for the completion of that design effort. And the goal, like the culvert project, is to go through the same grant program to obtain construction funding with a future grant application.
So if I recall, this has been a long time coming, and I know that by removal of the dam, it will restore that area to its natural habitat.
Correct.
And I know that the repairing of the dam or reconstruction of it, if we kept it in place, would be substantially more money than if we were to remove it.
Right.
But most importantly, I believe the environmental agency at the state level, they actually encourage municipalities to remove dams like this one.
Right.
And therefore, they would be open to funding those removals instead of the city's taxpayers paying for it. So there were 3 or 4 reasons why the dam removal was more an appealing choice on the city's part, not just because of the cost, but there's a lot of ecological and natural habitat benefits to having the dam removed that the state environmental agencies actually encourage us to do. So is it fair to say that if we decided to not do that, we would probably have to cover these costs all on our own as well?
Correct.
Yeah.
So unless the dam's used for water supply or flood control, the state's position is that the ecological benefits outweigh repairing a dam and restoring the dam. Because ultimately, the natural pre-construction environment was no dam in that location. It was just a stream, Phillips Brook, kind of meandering through the area that the dam's in now. So they prefer us to remove those types of dams that don't have any other real use anymore.
And so like everything else, once this gets approved, the construction cost, better than 50% chance we'll probably get state assistance on that, if not in full, because they want us to remove it as well, and they're giving us this money now, so they've kind of already set us in that course.
Yeah, they've already met with us, expressed their desire to see us remove the dam. They've given us money to complete the design and permitting, and they've basically helped position us to get that construction funding for the final removal of the dam. Yes.
Councilor Van Haasingen.
So I've noticed for a long time that section of Westminster Hill Road by the dam is down to 1 lane. Is that connected to the condition of the dam, or is it the condition of the bridge? Are these projects related? Are they separate, or what's the status there?
So when we were evaluating the hydrology and hydraulics of the dam itself, we considered upstream and downstream, so that bridge was considered as part of the overall hydrologic and hydraulic analysis. But the issues with that bridge itself are not related to McTaggart's Pond Dam. So there's some structural issues underneath that bridge. It's a stone arch that's beginning to fail. And we've actually gotten a grant through the Mass DOT's Small Bridge Program to design and repair that bridge, or design repairs to that bridge and bid it out for construction. Right now we're in the permitting phase. We're having difficulty obtaining a signature from one of the abutting landowners that we need in order to file for the permits that we need to move forward with design, bidding, and construction. So we're in a holding pattern right now, trying to seek that signature. That grant expires at the end of this calendar year, so we're kind of really pushing the engineering company to get that signature from the landowner. So I would love nothing more to bid it out this spring, get it constructed, and fix that bridge before the end of this calendar year so we can take advantage of those grant funds.
Is the issue locating the landowner or getting them to agree to sign?
A little bit of both. So the landowner, the land actually belongs to a trust, and finding the person responsible for that trust is the problem.
Those things can get complicated.
Right. So we've been able to contact the attorney that represents the trust, but for some reason we haven't been able to get the signature from that attorney. So we need to seek other strategies in getting that signature.
Are there any alternative lines of attack to solve this problem without their agreement?
Unfortunately, because of the configuration of the bridge and the fact that we need to get down in there to do the work, there's really no alternative design that we can go forward with. So we need the signature on the permitting form in order to move forward.
Okay.
Unless the permitting agency is able to waive that signature, and we haven't gone down that road yet.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve. Sorry. 3423. If there are no objections, It is approved.
Thank you,
Thank you.
councilors.
Last item on the agenda is a communication from Mayor Steve Dean Talley regarding the Second American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA budget. Communication dated February 1st from the mayor to the city council states as follows. Dear honorable councilors, in February of 2022, I submitted my first proposed American Rescue Plan Act ARPA budget that included $15 million in spending on a variety of projects addressing public health, the economic impacts of COVID-19, and infrastructure, including an earlier grant to the Health Department for $500,000 and a $50,000 allocation for ARPA administration. The city has committed $15,550,000 of the original $31,238,459 grant from the U.S. Treasury. At the time the first budget was proposed, I expected to reconvene the ARPA Advisory Committee this month in order to review progress and make recommendations as to when to release additional rounds of ARPA funds. Given that many of the projects from the first round are still being rolled out and that construction costs have significantly increased, I proposed using most of the remaining funds to complete work on projects that were initiated in the first budget. Therefore, I am proposing that an additional $15.5 million be allocated from ARPA funds to the projects listed on the attached sheet and ask City Council to approve this budget. Once approved, at the next City Council meeting, I will follow with individual orders for each project. Thank you for your consideration, Mayor Stephen DiNatale. So the 2023 proposals before us, total budget of $15.5 million. Responding to public health emergency, 0. Responding to negative economic impacts, $7.5 million. Water and sewer infrastructure, $8 million. And remaining ARPA funds available, $551,160. That remaining balance includes ARPA funds of $188,459 of unallocated ARPA receipts and $362,701 of accumulated investment income on the ARPA funds. Councilors, like the way we address the CDBG funds, we'll do so in this regard in a similar manner. The first section is economic impact. There are two projects, Project A and B. Project A, first project for $5.5 million. Sponsor is the Fitchburg Public Library. The project is for the library renovation project. Project A is calling for the support of the $40 million renovation of Fitchburg Public Library. The project will create a 21st century library that will allow teens and adults to access materials, access the internet with a high-speed connection, to gather for informational recreational programs, to meet in small groups without disturbing others, and for children to have a dedicated space for story times, crafting, and programs such as puppet and magic shows. This project will be matched by the MBLC State Grant Program, fundraising, and city bond financing. And if you recall, committee members, when the council voted for the $12 million city loan order, in addition to the first round of ARPA funds, I believe we had $6 million from there, in addition to $12+ million from the state. It was communicated to us at those times when we had those votes that the mayor would likely be back to us with another round of ARPA funds to cover the balance up to, I think it was $2 or $3 million, maybe less, which would be the fundraising aspect. So basically, this was already communicated to us that this was coming several times before. And with that, I don't see anybody from the library here, but the mayor is here if there's any questions about this $5.5 million request for the library renovation project. And I'll just take individual motions for votes on these because there's only 4 of them. So are there any, Council Boschman?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, and you'll be very, very happy tonight, and the mayor's going to be a big smile. I'm totally 100% behind what you propose here tonight, 100%. So you won't get no peeps out of me. And I just want to say it's a very good plan. I like it. It does, the ARPA fund does what it's supposed to do for the whole city.
Council, since you mentioned the whole plan, if the committee, does the committee want me to read the other 3 and we take it all up at once and then ask questions whichever one we want? Or do you want to take it individually?
I would prefer you to read, well, me,
Individual?
read the whole thing and then,
So Council Boschman wants to take it all at once, Council Cruz individually. I don't mind taking it individually myself.
That's fine with me.
Okay, so we'll take them individually, one at a time. We'll take individual votes. So on Project A, for the $5.5 million for the library renovation project, I will entertain a motion to accept that one.
Motion to accept?
On the motion.
Do I have a second?
I thought you didn't.
Well,
I'll second.
okay, unless you have a question for somebody.
No.
Okay, so motion made and seconded to approve the mayor's recommendation for Project A, library renovation, $5.5 million. Councilor Cruz on the motion.
Yeah, it's my understanding that there might be additional funds coming from the state level, and there's some conversations happening with the board of the libraries as well, at MBLC, and I'm wondering if we're sort of jumping the gun here and not seeing if we're going to get that funds or that match from the board.
So I too have heard the same thing, actually, directly from from Representative Kuchmarek. I believe I personally emailed him about our situation after the loan order was passed, because at that meeting, what we originally thought was going to be $6 million in city loan, it would be 12 because of the mass increase due to inflation. I think the project cost went up $9+ million, and they indicated to us that every community in the city, in the Commonwealth, obviously is experiencing the same increase. Councilor, keep calling him Councilor because I remember when he was Representative Kuchmarek's office wrote back to me and told me that he, in fact, along with a coalition of representatives and senators from the affected communities that are having library renovation projects, they're already one step ahead of us on that. They're in negotiations or talks through the budgetary process or through whatever supplemental procedure they go through with funding to address the impact of the inflationary aspect on communities that have library projects. And so from what I gathered from him, they're working on trying to increase the MBLC allotment of $12 million in our case to something higher to defray hopefully all the inflationary costs, but if not a portion of it. That was several months ago. I don't know where that stands. I know we want to get the ball rolling here. I do know, Mr. Auditor, correct me if I'm wrong, that while Councilor Cruz's point is well made about jumping the gun, because we don't know what that process stands. For me personally, I don't know where it stands either, and I don't know how much longer it's going to take. I know we want to get moving on this because costs keep going up. But also, I would say that in the event that the state does increase the funding allotment, either of the full amount or a part of the amount, it will certainly not only defray the cost of needing to have fundraising, it would come out of that bucket, so the library wouldn't have to privately fundraise at all or a good deal of that remaining balance. Also, the $12 million that we approved for a loan order, we didn't take out the full $12 million right away. It gets taken out in tranches, right? Conceivably? Yeah. Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Oh, okay, well.
Withdraw my motion.
Okay, so motion's withdrawn. Thank you. So, Mr. Auditor, can you just explain, because sometimes, just because we approved the $12 million loan order,
So-
we didn't commit the $12 million yet.
So what the council approved was a $40 million loan order for the library, of which $12 million was going to be ARPA funds, $12.5 million was going to be from the MBLC, $12 million was going to be borrowed by the city, and $3.5 was going to be fundraised. So this, in the first ARPA budget, the city had voted a budget of $6.5 million for the library. In agreeing to fund the $40 million project, it was expected that an additional $5.5 would go toward, would come from the ARPA funds, which is what's reflected in this proposed budget. I believe that I guess the money that could be coming, additional state money, would be used to deal with any inflationary aspects of the project, because I think even at the $40 million, they're running into some difficulties with keeping the project at $40 million. And at this point, because I'm jumping ahead now to Crocker School, I know the Crocker School project, the bid openings are next week, and at that time, we'll have an idea as to whether that project is within budget or not. And so I think the money, additional money coming from the state could be used on the library side to either fund if there's an overage on the construction bidding, or if it comes in on target, then I guess at that point, there could be a change in what was recommended for coming from ARPA.
So the point is that we're committing all of this, even though the state is pledging at this time that they're working on an increase to cover the fact that the project went from 31 to 40. And so my only point to you and to the counselor is, while that's a good point, any additional money we get from the state could cover beyond the 40, or if it doesn't go beyond the 40, it could lessen the amount that the library would have to fundraise, or it would lessen the amount we would have to borrow.
Would lessen the amount the city would have to borrow. That's
Right.
another way that
So-
it could go.
Right, so, I mean, I'm not concerned about it, because if we do get money from them, project goes over, it'll cover that overage. The project stays within 40 million. We can then borrow less, since we've already committed it, or fundraise a lot less.
Right.
So, but the 40 million is the 40 million. But we can still work around how that's going to get paid for. So more money from the state would definitely alleviate the borrowing side for us. It would lower that $12 million borrowing number considerably, or the library wouldn't have to fundraise. We would just cover it with that.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
I don't know where the status is of those negotiations. Maybe I should follow up with Representative Kuchmerik's office from his last message to me to ask him, what's going on with that, where do we stand? And I will personally do that. So, and I'll share that with the council. Council Van Huizinga?
Yeah, so I mean, it's great if we can get this initial money, but we don't have it yet. So we got to plan like we don't. And if we do get it, we have other options to spend it. And we also have a lot of long-term capital needs that if we don't have to borrow for this project, we can put it towards something else that we need to do. And we have plenty of things that we need to do in the city. And I think the greatest benefit we can get from these ARPA investments is to reduce our long-term operating costs. If we can do, like future on, we're doing water mains, that work still has to be done regardless if we get the ARPA funding, and that's going to be paid by the Fitchburg ratepayers. So if we can make investments in our long-term financial viability, I think it's the greatest benefit. And right now, the library is something we need to do, and as we have the project funded right now, this is vital. We can't move forward without it. And if we can get additional funding, we can shift that stuff around and use it elsewhere. But there is a time limit to this funding as well, that we either have to use it by a certain date or we lose it. This is our opportunity to use it. So I think we go for it, we get more money, we adjust then.
Councilor Boschman?
You all done?
Yep.
I just want to make it very clear, because you're very loosely saying we can lower the expectation of the city, the library, from not making a fundraiser. I'm totally against it. They want a new library. They want us to construct a new library. Then let them go full steam ahead and get the 3.4 million, 3.5, and plus some more, so it can help the taxpayers of the city of Fitchburg. And I won't support that if they're not going to have a fundraiser. I'll make that very clear. And if it goes over $40 million, they better come back to the council, because there's a lot of questions I got to ask. Because I looked down the street, what they built down there for $31 million, compared to what we're building for $40 million. So I'm really upset with it, but I told them I back it, I like it, and I'll stick with my guns, because I voted for the library. But I won't let up on the fact that they are going to do what they said they were, 3.5 million plus. And that's what we expect, and that's what the ratepayers expect.
Well, not to...
I'm sorry if I get all heated.
No, not to go too deep into this, but first of all, we're talking about hypotheticals here. We don't know if the state's going to give us anything, or a piece of it, or all of it. Whatever we get from the state, we need to move forward with where we are right now. So we're getting into hypotheticals of what may or may not happen down the road. Let's get the money first and then see what's going to happen. For me, if the fundraising is going to be difficult to achieve, and I don't know if it is, I certainly don't want to hold the project up because of that if the state is giving us more tax dollars to cover the difference. My preference would be just now that we would lower our bonding usage. That would be my first choice. But again,
fine.
this is all speculation at this point. Let's, I'm going to go figure out or ask the representative what the status is, but let's worry about that when we get to that point, when the state does give us more, if they ever do. We don't know. We only know what we know right now. Councilor Van Huizenga.
And I can tell you that the library and the trustees are working on the fundraising. They've already started that. It's not that they're not going to try. They have consultants. They've started those efforts. That's what they're working on. That's what they're planning on. But it's an unknown. They're going to try their best to raise that money, and they think they can do it, but we don't know if they can. So to have money available possibly as a reserve, just in case, benefits us. It's good planning.
Councilor Cruz.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I've been in full support of the library this entire go-around. It was just a question for us to go over. And I was a former trustee, and I do believe that they're going to continue the fundraising and do get the number that they said they could get. So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the mayor's recommendation for library renovation, $5.5 million, Project A. No objections? It is favorably recommended. Project B, Crocker Field, sponsored by the city, $2 million. This project will replace the natural grass field at Crocker Field with an artificial turf field, thereby allowing it to be used for more games and practices in a variety of sports. Additional funding will come from donations and grants. And I do know, I think we've seen the news recently that the New England Patriots awarded us $295,000 for this effort, plus the $2 million. So we already got about 2.3 that I know of, and I'm sure additional grants and donations will be forthcoming. But just for me, I used to be on the Crocker Field Restoration Committee, and I know Chairman Lamey and Mr. Laxo are here to make a brief presentation, and I'll allow them to. But I just wanted to say in advance of that, I was a former member of the Board of Directors on the Crocker Field Restoration Committee many years ago, and this was always the most expensive and top of the list item that we had, and that was 20 years ago. So Crocker Field is a historic landmark. It is a city jewel, and it is used by the community, but most importantly, the students of the Fitchburg Public Schools. And having a turf field, natural grass, having a turf field will significantly lessen the maintenance costs on that facility, preserve the life of that facility for many, many years to come, and will also allow us to do much more with the facility. We can have a lot more sporting events, have a lot more high school sporting events there, not just football. Everyone just thinks of football. There's a lot more there. The track and field, you name it. But, gentlemen, if you want to make your presentation, please feel free to. Mr. Lamey?
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. My name is Tom Lamey. I'm the treasurer of the Crocker Field Restoration Committee. Our president is Rick Kazanjian. I was also the president of the Band Association at Fitchburg High School. But I'm also here with my dear colleague Lenny Laxo, who's been on the committee with me for 18 years. And if there's anybody that knows anything about Crocker Field, it's Lenny. He's the engineer, and he knows every aspect of that physical facility. But before I start, I just have to tell you that my first time in this building was on Monday night for a school committee meeting to do a similar presentation. And this is really, truly a magnificent facility and something you can all be proud of having done. It's inspirational. I think it builds confidence in our city and inspires people to want to lead by just looking around at the building here. So facilities do matter. So I'm here tonight to give you a little background information on Crocker Field. Hopefully it won't be too repetitive from what Chairman DiNatale had said, but Crocker Field was given to the city of Fitchburg by Alva Crocker was given to the children as a gift to the children of the city in 1918. It's on the National Register of Historic Places because it was designed by the Olmsted brothers of Brookline, Massachusetts. And in its long history here, 125 years, it's been used for all kinds of sport activities. It used to be an ice rink out on Crocker Field for outdoor ice hockey years ago. I don't know if anyone remembers that. It's been the site of Special Olympic events. It's been the site of different kinds of ceremonies. Most people remember it because of the Thanksgiving rivalry, one of the longest in the United States, longest in Massachusetts. But it's also serves for the all-school relays, which if you haven't been to those, it's unbelievable. There's like 5,000 people that come down, their parents, to that vicinity. It's also been used for public ceremonies. When we had the terrible destruction of the Twin Towers, there was a public mourning ceremony at Crocker Field. So it really is the hub of our community and provides a lot of, the cultural aspects that tie us together. Crocker Field Restoration Committee has been working with the City of Fitchburg and the Fitchburg Public Schools, and it's only because of that type of collaboration that we've been able to move forward and do the projects we have in the past few years. Our project this year, as Marcus said, related to providing a field turf, renovating redoing the whole track, and redoing the lights. Those things are going to provide access and equity. That's our goal. Access because you're going to have every sport team that we have be able to go on that field and play. Right now it's just football. And soccer is limited. And field hockey is non-existent on that field. So with a field turf, you can have all of those sports, both boys and girls sports on the field. We've had requests to have a semi-pro soccer team come down there and play, but none of those could happen because the turf doesn't take it. It's not used at all in the summer because you're preserving the grass for the fall. So this would really expand the access to the field, expand the number of months we can use the field, and it's an equity issue as well, because if you look around Fitchburg, almost all the communities around us have field turf fields, much more modern facilities for the students to play on and for the students to practice on. So, we really feel those are extremely important goals, and I'm sure that you're all aware of if that project were completed, what type of economic impact it would have here in the North Main Street area. It would draw a lot of people down here for events. We could be proud of using that as a facility and a site. I think it would draw a lot of economic interest, and it would be part of that urban renewal that you've been working on so hard about along the whole river walk there. Our group has been diligently, over the years, trying to access grants. Community development block grants have been very generous. We have to get, matching funds for that, so we do our fundraisers with our people who have contributed to the Crocker Field Restoration Committee. We have written historical grants. I say we, but it's Lenny who's written the historical commission grants. But almost all of those are matching grants, so you have to come up with the money you need. Excuse me.
Want one?
I have some in my pocket. Thank you, Paul. Over the years, since 2004, we have done projects totaling about $2 million, or over $2 million now, on Crocker Field with the monies we've done through fundraising. But most of those projects are in the range of maybe $10,000 to $25,000. We've had a few that were in the range of $100,000 and $150,000 through community development block grants and so forth. But to do the project we're intending to do now with the field turf, the lights, and the track, we can't do that without a real investment in capital spending. So what will happen, if we go through with this project is the stadium lights, those will be all ripped out and changed because they don't even make the bulbs for those lights anymore. The technology is so old. when they went out a few years ago, we had to go around the country trying to find the light bulbs to fix some of those lights, and some of them are still gone. So you can't get the bulbs for them anymore, so those have to be changed. The track needs to be redone because it's been resurfaced a couple of times. And if you go on Crocker Field and look at the track, there's a couple of lanes that they couldn't use this year because they're pitted and there's a root coming in on one side of it and lifting up the track. So the school department has funded a study by the Gale Associates engineering firm, a very experienced firm in doing these types of projects. And the estimate for that project is $3.1 million, and that was done in November of 22. But this is a slide that really is, I think, quite stunning. If you look at that, this is the access and equity slide. And you can see now that at the current Crocker Field, the number of athletic events and things that can happen at the field are really restricted. And if we went through with this project, you can see the number of events that would be possible to have at Crocker Field. And so it really would ramp up and increase the use of the field, drawing people downtown, provide equity for the students who are playing on it, and more access for the community and for all of the teams. So I'm really hoping it's our desire, because after 18 years of trying to do these types of projects, it's very frustrating. And one of those reasons is that Crocker Field, because it was given to the children of Fitchburg, is really owned by the city, but it's under the control of the school department. It's not considered a public entity. And years ago, we tried to apply for one of the open space grants that public parks and recreation can get. We weren't eligible because it's not truly a public space. So we're very limited in that regard in terms of that. I just want to say that the amount of money we have raised already, we have two key donors that have already committed money to our fund. Polar Beverage is one, and Digital Properties is the other. And both of them combined is about $250,000. The NFL, as you have mentioned, we wrote a grant a year ago. We didn't get that grant. We got a grant this year. That grant is totally of $250,000 as well. We also have Representative Kushmarek and Senator Cronin, who were kind enough to get an earmark for us this year. It was another $50,000, and I think there's some possibility of getting an additional one next year. So to date, if you were to include the $2 million from ARPA, we think we have about $2,800,000 that we could put together. And we now have to raise another maybe $700,000. We have not gone to any of the other, like, local community businesses. We have not gone to any foundations yet that we know we could probably appeal to because they've supported us in the past. And we have not gone to the community, to the students and the parents and the general public yet. So we feel very confident that we're at this moment in time where, now is the right time to do this work, and it would be a tremendous boon to the city. So happy to answer any questions, and if I can't, I'm sure Lenny can probably address them as well.
Council Boschman.
On the track, on the track, are you going to, is it going to be rubber like it is now?
It's going to be the same composition. There may be some new, I don't know, Lenny, is there a new formula for those things anymore or not?
They made some improvements over the last 3 years, but it's basically the same as what we have now.
Yeah, they actually take the one that's there, they grind it up, and they use it as kind of the base, a part of the base. Yeah.
Now, how long did they usually last? The only reason why I asked that, a couple of years ago, I used to walk inside when it was open to the public, and I was walking inside to get exercise, but I haven't done it in years. So I just like to know how long it lasts, because I looked at the one at Fitchburg State College, and it's kind of cracking and wavy up there on their field in some areas, and you can see the water, where the water is going in and underneath.
Well, I know the college just redid their field and track, so
I was up there, well, as a matter of fact, last year, to be honest with you. I used to walk with Kevin Maynard.
Yeah.
Around there.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
You don't recall when the track was installed?
Yeah, the track we have now was installed in 1988, and then it was resurfaced about 10 years ago, so we got our money's worth of the original track.
And the lights, I think, were 1987 or something like that. They're 36 years old.
Well, back on that track, on your screen where you showed the current and future right there, on these things here that you're doing, if they're not kids, like the adult, I saw one for the adult hockey or football or whatever. Do we charge for people who used it out at Crocker Field?
The school department would,
They will.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's, again, you know, the revenue that could be brought in there through events like that or through, you know, sales of, you know, concession stand sales and things like that would really help all of the programs. You know, we're hoping to raise more money than the field actually costs because we recognize the fact you really have to have a reserve fund.
I agree.
Because in 15 years, you may have to replace the material on the field. And that's the intent.
I like it. I mean, I won't give you a hard time. I really enjoy it. I think it's great. I think it's great that even though I didn't graduate from Finchwick High School, I went to the better school down the street. It's a great thing with Steve. But I'll support you 100%. I'll probably even give you a small donation. Not a very small donation.
We'll be around at some point in time.
Very small.
Councilor Van Hessingen?
All help.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when looking at the plan, is the plan to keep the track in the field in basically the same arrangement as it is now and just put it in the same spot?
Yeah, there's the same shape, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be the same. There's no other, you know, they tried to figure out a configuration, but it's bounded by the plot that it's on, so.
Now, and have you done any work to look at sort of the ongoing, how this will change the ongoing maintenance costs of the facility?
I think the previous school department business manager did some research on that, and it's about even. You know, if you don't have to cut the grass, but you have to, you know, rake it with and you have to redo the pellets that are in there that keeps the grass up. So, I think he said it was about the same money. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that's true. It's about the same.
And I love the idea. I think the idea of building on this asset that we have in the city for a gathering place in downtown is tremendous. I think to have people there for more than just Friday nights in the fall would be spectacular. To use it for more uses, to bring outside tournaments, and I think that's really an asset to the city. And I think it's sort of a legacy asset that we've had that we just haven't been able to invest in. Right. So if we can make that investment, it'll be a great benefit.
Best part of the year, in the summer, you drive by there, it's nice and green, it looks beautiful, but, you can't put anybody on it because if by the time the fall comes, it'll be, you can't use it, be all muddy and caked in. If anybody's walked out on Crocker Field, on the grass area, it's really because of drainage, and it's 100 years old. It's just settled, and we did a study 4 or 5 years ago to see what would happen if we replaced, just redid the grass, tore it all up. That was an enormous cost, almost $1 million to rip it all out, resurface it, put all the drainage in, redo the grass, sod it. That was a huge cost. It wasn't really cost effective.
Now, looking at long-term and other projects at the field, what would be other things that need to be done? I mean, is there more concrete pointing work? Is there work on the clubhouse that needs to be done long-term? What else are you looking at beyond the field?
Our committee actually conducted a little walk through our own, very unprofessional, but just to notice areas of the field that really have to be done. So the roof on the clubhouse was redone a few years ago, so that's in good shape. The grandstand roof was done with a grant from Rollstone Bank and Trust. I think that's in pretty good shape. We've done some downspouts, copper downspouts that were repaired, a lot of drainage things around the clubhouse, but the clubhouse itself is this stucco material, and it's peeling off of some of the wire meshing. So if you go in the back of the clubhouse, you'll see this under the fascia, it's a big chunk of it kind of missing. The caps, the cement caps on the walls, those are all done last year, year before, Lynn, that were kind of just redone, resurfaced, painted, so it's cosmetic. So there's still a lot of that work to be done. The men and women's facilities really should have things done to them. But like I said, the Crocker Field Committee feels comfortable in, doing projects around the $50,000, $100,000 mark, but we don't have the capacity to really, we're a totally volunteer organization. We don't have anybody working for us or anything like that. So it's we think we could do some of those projects piece by piece over time, as we have done, but we can't do the main project, which is the field and the track and the lights all together.
All right, great. I think it's great that we have this opportunity to make this investment, and I'm looking forward to it. I support it.
Councilor Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's terrific, too. It's expanding equity for, everybody who can use it and play on it, the groups and the teams. As a former Red Raider soccer player who had to play at Fitchburg High instead of Crocker Field, it's definitely encouraging to hear. My only concern is how many studies how have you looked into the toxic chemicals that they are saying are with these artificial turfs now? Many cities and municipalities actually outlawed them. Mayor Wu in Boston has outlawed artificial turf in parks. The chemicals are linked to cancer, thyroid problems, liver conditions.
Yeah, we asked Gale Associates some of those same questions, and they've done some studies and some research on that. I don't know if the new materials in the fields have made any difference, but Lenny, would you want to comment on that at all, or being our engineer in residence?
Yeah, I haven't seen yet what Gail's response was. I was kind of interested in seeing that myself. But as far as safety goes, an artificial turf field is safer than a natural turf field just because of all the unevenness of the surface on a natural turf field. People are turning their ankles and everything on that, while the synthetic turf field has a true surface, so you don't get that type of injury. So, in general, the synthetic turf is safer to play on than natural turf.
Yeah, if we get if Gale has done that study, or I know they were collecting some of the research on that because of those same articles that were coming up. But I thought they had mentioned something about, the incidents, whatever the research was, what do I want to say? Kind of the evidence that they have is very, not really 100% impactful for students. I mean, there might be some of that out there, but, and then I think the other thing was they were talking about whether that was done with those research studies were done on the old materials or the more modern ones. So I'm sure they'll redo some of that engineering work in the future to.
I think they're still trying to figure out the long-term effects, I think, is a big part of the problem because it is relatively new material. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe again, the kids are on the field for very short periods of time. It's not like they're living in the environment.
Thank you.
Mayor, you wanted to?
Thank you. I want to add some information to this. I had a conversation with Gale maybe 2 or 3 months ago in anticipation of just that kind of question. So they're prepared, if they aren't now, they will be, to present, if you would like, the materials that are being used. And they've assured me that I think what you're talking about, Counselor, is some carcinogenic qualities to some of the, what is it, like a pellet, apparently. You've seen it with the pros, too. It flies up in the air when you get hit or whatever. But there are substances that are far greater over the years that aren't a problem. But I asked this person at Gale, prepare to come forward and give us a presentation on that, because I know there'll be concerns. But hopefully we can reach out to Gale tomorrow. I think I had this conversation with Jeremy Roach as well at the school department. So we can provide that for you if it would be helpful.
Thank you.
I'll just close by saying that as a former football player, track and field I lived on that field for 4 years, many years before that, watching the games. You don't really realize, and I'm guilty of this too, just how much of an economic impact having that field revitalized would do to the downtown. It would not only greatly improve access and equity for the student population in all facets of sports, it would also bring new life to that area, inspire more students who maybe are on the fence about playing and wanting to play. There is some psychological effect of playing on a natural grass field with a lot of problems and going to another school and seeing, nice turf field, new lights. So the investment also signals, this is a school infrastructure project, basically, is that there's so many benefits to this, but I didn't fully realize or understand or appreciate the comments about all the extra things we can do if this field is fully renovated and modernized, how it will greatly enhance economic activity and interest in the downtown, which would fit in nicely with what's going on right now with downtown. I know we're trying to revitalize the usage of Riverfront Park with an amphitheater, more city events down there, more events over here at Crocker, complements nicely both ends of downtown. And with that interest of people from inside and outside the community, people are going to want to buy stuff. People are going to want to go to the restaurants or eateries. So there is no downside to this. We needed a spark of life for that renovation of that field, and we got it through this ARPA package. Because I remember when I was on the board, one of the most frustrating aspects of raising funds for this was, as Mr. Lamy said, because of the deed or the will of it belonging to the school committee, the school department, it essentially locked the city out from any historical grants, public park grants, because it wasn't a public space that everyone could use at any time, like Park Hill or Coolidge or Coggeshall. It was a school facility, so it didn't meet the criteria. I always have people say to me, why did Doyle get renovated? Well, Doyle Field is a public park. It is not a school facility. That's why they got all these grants and these federal and state assistance. We're at a disadvantage through no fault of our own, and I'm sure Mr. Crocker, in hindsight, would have maybe thought differently if he knew it would have precluded us from getting all that assistance. But here we are finally getting something, and like you gentlemen said, please don't stop with the fundraising. You can never have too much. And hopefully we get a good enough seed in front of us that once everything is finished, we will have a nice cushion to take on smaller things so they don't become bigger things. So I'm very excited about this as a former player, former student, and as a lifelong resident and taxpayer. Not lifelong taxpayer, but 20 years. Just one quick question. When do we anticipate the work is going to start here? I know it's dependent upon fundraising, but is there any idea, like, are we talking 2 years from now, 5 years from now? I mean, when will we start to see some progress? Maybe you don't know exactly, but like, what's the earliest you think we could see something moving on this?
Yeah, our hope is that, groundbreaking and stuff would happen late in FY23 and be finished by FY24. Now, we also have a person on our committee, Pete Carlson, who's in construction, and because of all the construction projects going on, that timeline may be adjusted, but outwards. But now's the time to really do this work and get the project going as fast as we can, because everybody's talking about inflationary pressures, and hopefully that's going to get pushed back a little bit. But our plan is for FY24.
So the $3.5 million is for all of the major things we want to have done, but you're talking about, for what we have the money for now, we can get started on a lot of stuff now.
3.1 million is what the November 22, last November's bid cost estimates were from Gale.
Okay.
And that went up maybe it was 300,000 or something like that from a previous one that was done in the previous May.
And I know we've had previous in-kind contributions from contractors, or are we looking to do that still? Is there anybody willing
There's a lot
to?
of little projects that we're doing. There are some in-kind things that are being done, but I mean, I'd leave that up to whoever's managing the project, because you don't want to have anybody that's not part of the contract.
Okay, so
But we
that's
have-
sooner,
We have done a lot of work through in-kind. I mean, Pete Carlson, I don't know how much time and effort he's did when he did the brick walkway at Crocker Field, and that was all part of his work, donated.
that's sooner than I expected, even if it was by 2025, and I'll just say that
Yeah.
just as a conservative estimate, that's still a lot quicker than I expected, so this is very exciting.
Scoreboard donated by FATV.
Yep.
A board, yeah. So I mean,
Right.
we've had a lot of that kind of participation. But again, those are the smaller projects, and can't do it without the large capital investment. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Project B Crocker Field for $2 million. If there are no objections, it is recommended favorably by this committee. Thank you. Unanimous. Last two items, I will just take them together since they're both involving water and sewer infrastructure, and they're both involving water main replacements. We've got Boulder Drive for $3 million and Main Street for $5 million, both of which are projects that will replace the water mains for a total of $8 million between the two locations. Commissioner Erickson.
So regarding the Boulder Drive water main project, we were fortunate to receive an allocation from the first round of ARPA funding. We've gone through the design process. We're nearing the bid phase of the project, and we're estimating that we're coming up short with the construction funding that was allocated during the first round. So we're seeking this extra money to cover that gap and allow us to do full width road paving also at the completion of the water main project, because all the other utilities within Boulder Drive are done at this point. So we'd hate to dig it up and leave a trench patch in the middle of the pavement that's out there right now, because it's in rough shape, as you know. So that's the Boulder Drive water main project. We'd like to get started with that this summer. We want to bid it out within the next couple of months, get that started. The only issue we foresee is the availability of ductile iron pipe. So after we bid it out, we'll have to work with the contractor to make sure that we can secure that. There is a little bit of a delay, supply chain shortage right now that we're seeing in other areas. So that has the potential to impact the schedule of the project.
So for Boulder Drive, where does it start and where does it end? Is it at the Montori gas station, that bend right there off of Main and goes all the way up to the Upper Common, or is it just a section of it?
It's that
So-
whole run.
Whole run.
From essentially Montori's to the Upper Common.
And you said that this money will also cover a full-scale repaving of that whole stretch?
Correct.
Now, we were told that ARPA doesn't allow for paving, but is this because it's in relation to a water sewer infrastructure project that we're allowed to use those funds to pave this road?
Right, so you can't use the funds specifically for a paving project, but because this is a water main project and we're restoring the impacts to the roadway because of that water main installation, it's allowable under that scenario.
I just want to make sure that's clear, because we'll get more questions. Well, why don't we pave this street? And that, well, it's got to be tied to a,
Right.
and how long is this stretch? I mean, it's very long, too.
It's a little under a mile.
But that's a lot of money, though, being a mile long. I remember when we did Shea Street many years ago, that was like $3 million, and that was...
That was years ago, and
yeah.
costs have gone up. The price of diesel's gone up, the price of labor's gone up. So it's expensive to replace water mains. It's expensive to pave. It's almost exactly a mile from the statue over by Morin Square to the boulder. So for comparison's sake, so it's roughly 3/4 of a mile that we're talking about here with this water main project. But we're also taking care of the side streets that connect Boulder Drive to Main Street as part of this. And what that'll allow us to do is when we go to eventually design and construct the Main Street water main replacement, it'll allow us to bypass flows easier, to provide temporary service to the businesses and residences along Main Street.
So that's another good thing to hear about the water main replacement and also the paving. We get a lot of concerns or questions about paving on Boulder Drive and Main Street, and with the whole economic redevelopment of downtown, everyone also thinks about paving the streets. And when do you expect the Boulder Drive section replacement and then the paving, when is that all forecasted to be completed by?
If there's no supply chain shortage, it should be done by the end of 2023. But we still have to bid the project out, so we're kind of at the whim of contractors' schedules and availability of materials.
So
we won't know
2024
that.
to be safe?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
say end of 2024 to be safe.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so you mentioned Boulder Drive. I mean, are there any, he talked about, you have anything more to say about Boulder Drive?
Nope, happy to
Okay,
answer questions.
any questions on Boulder Drive?
Boulder Drive.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman
My only question to you on Boulder Drive, as we dig it up, and we're going to fix the water main, at the same time when we dig it up, are we going to fix the catch basins if they're down and broken?
That'll be part of the paving effort. So any catch basins that need to be rehabbed are going to be rehabbed in order to get a nice even road surface. We wouldn't leave just a crumbling catch basin when we go to repave the road.
Okay, that's what I want to know. I appreciate that.
Councilor Van Huizinga?
How old is just generally the existing water main infrastructure in these two streets?
Over 100 years in most spots.
So it's got to be done regardless of whether or not we spend ARPA monies on it. They just have to be replaced, right?
They have to be done at some point. It's very old cast iron water main. There's no way around replacing them at some point. So if we don't have the ARPA funds to tackle this project, it's going to come out of the enterprise fund, and that means it's going to be the ratepayers that end up paying for it.
So we would have to increase the water rates basically to pay for the financing this project.
Correct. So we're undergoing a rate study right now for water and wastewater regardless of this project. We're factoring the fact that we're getting all this influx of ARPA capital into the rate study to hopefully reduce the amount of rate increases that we'll end up seeing.
And since it was designed 100 years ago, I'm sure if you were building it fresh, you'd do it a little differently. So I'm encouraged that you're going to plan ahead with these two projects to really do it right, because you have this opportunity to basically do it all at once.
Right. And one of the benefits for doing Boulder Drive before we do Main Street, there's two different pressure zones on Main Street. There really doesn't need to be. So by upsizing the water main on Boulder Drive, we'll potentially be able to eliminate one of those pressure zones on Main Street and reduce the amount of piping that we have out there by half. So it's going to make the Main Street project a lot more affordable.
Is part of the difficulty in doing this project the high number of connections? Because the Main Street is so densely developed and there's so many connections coming off these mains. Does that make it a more difficult and expensive project to do?
It does, in addition to all the other utilities that are buried under Main Street. So as you drive down Main Street, you'll notice there's no overhead wires. So all that stuff's underground. You've got sewer under there, you've got gas, you've got electric, you've got drainage, and everything's very, very old. You've also got trolley tracks buried in there somewhere that I'm sure we'll run into and have to deal with and remove and all that. So there's a lot under there, and as you dig, it's very slow digging, because as you encounter each of those buried utilities, you have to deal with them, you have to account for them, make sure they're not live, make sure you're not running into conflicts. So our surveys are as good as they can be, but they're only surveys from above ground and based on record plans. So as we dig, we find stuff that doesn't match up, stuff that's not on the survey plan. So it's quite a thing when you actually get into the construction phase.
Oh, I'm sure. So also, I think this project's going to be a lot easier to handle downtown now that we have Main Street and Boulder Drive both going two ways, so that if you have to close down sections of one road, we can still get traffic through in the other. So I think this is fortunate.
Correct.
That we have
That's one of the huge benefits of having two-way traffic downtown. It's a lot easier for our construction crews to go in there, makes it easier for Fitchburg Police to reroute cars around the work zones, makes it safer for the workers, safer for the motorists. It was a very strong point of consideration when we were planning the downtown two-way conversion project.
So the biggest ongoing project we've had throughout the city has been the sewer separation. Has that already been completed in this area? Not
in this area, no. So during 2023, we're working on the western end of Main Street for the combined sewer separation work. That's still outstanding. The second larger phase of the downtown project is going to be from essentially Prospect Street over to Blossom Street, and that'll happen roughly 2024, 2025.
So is the timing of this project to replace the mains and dig up the street, is that going to work with do they need to be dug up again for the sewer separation?
Not in Boulder Drive, with the exception of Putnam Street. So we're going to have to do a little bit of planning there. Obviously, we're not going to pave that intersection if it needs to be dug up the following year for combined sewer separation. So you might see a little gap in the paving. and that's only to accommodate that future combined sewer separation work. Everywhere that we're planning to pave is going to be, complete utility reconstruction done and completed.
So I'm glad we're thinking through this from start to finish, and we're not going to duplicate efforts. We're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. Thank you.
Councilor Cruz?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo those sentiments that we're doing it the right way and we're not going to be digging up twice. We're mentioning paving too. Are the plans to pave also include plans to make it more pedestrian friendly and, bike lanes, things of that nature? Right now, it's very automobile focused downtown.
Yes and no. A large portion of making downtown a little bit more pedestrian friendly was taken on with the two-way conversion project. So bike lanes were added throughout the majority of Boulder Drive. So when we go to install the water main, we'll repave the roadway, we'll fix whatever sidewalks are impacted by the work, but it's not a streetscape focused project. If there's some minor opportunities for improvement, such as adding RRFBs to crosswalks and whatnot, we can consider that. But the last thing we want to do is balloon the project costs with streetscape work that makes it unaffordable. So I'd be happy to have feedback from you and your constituents on specific areas that we can work into the project, but it's not a project that's going to replace all of the sidewalks from end to end, unfortunately.
No, I'm mostly just curious. Let's keep the streetscape stuff in Ward 6 for now. I appreciate that.
And I do also want to mention that Mass DOT is planning to replace the Water Street bridges. I believe the schedule for that is 2026 right now. So there'll be a portion of paving that we leave out because DOT is coming in, replacing the bridge, and taking care of that portion of the work for us. So as part of the two-way conversion project, you'll notice we transitioned from concrete sidewalk to asphalt sidewalk and berm for a stretch on either side of that Water Street Bridge over Boulder Drive. So that's the approximate Mass DOT area. So they'll take care of restoring that, putting back granite and concrete sidewalks and all that. So we've got to be mindful of their work too.
Thank you.
Council Bushman?
You tell me, on the water mains, I started on the council in 2014. John DeLine told us that it would cost $1 million a mile to replace water mains. How much work has been done on water mains in the city of Fitchburg since I started from 14 to now? You have any idea?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to talk to John DeLine and get some more exact figures on that. I know since I started in 2016, there's only been one water main replacement project, and it spanned 2 construction seasons. And since I believe it's 2018, we haven't done any major water main work, with the exception of Cushing Street, which we worked on last year. Cushing Street we replaced from Main Street to Boulder Drive. It's a very short run. We did that in anticipation of a grant that community development received to do the streetscape work there, close down Cushing Street and turn that into a pedestrian plaza as part of the Main Street Boulder Drive two-way project.
Because I just want to let the council know that since I came on, we have over 500 breaks in the city since I've been on water mains. Over 500 water main breaks since I've been on, since 2014. So another, what's that, about 40 a year, 50 a year, 50, 60 a year. It's about 60 a year.
The city's got over 80 miles of unlined cast iron water main that are anywhere from 50 to 100 years old. All of that needs to be replaced at some point in the near future. So it's a never-ending battle that we're fighting, trying to keep up with the work. Main Street and Boulder Drive, I think, are the 2 biggest nuts to crack, so to speak. So I'm very happy to see this ARPA money being dedicated to that cause.
I just want to make it very clear to everybody here. I'm not giving you a hard time because we're using ARPA money for paving, but I will not support, even underneath the rate study, where the taxpayer is paying, the ratepayer is paying for the road to be paved curb to curb. I won't support that. I believe if they dig a trench, they'll do like the utility company, patch the
Council,
trench.
you're talking about a rate thing that hasn't come to us yet. We'll
Coming though.
make those statements when we have the rate information before us.
But I just want him to know,
Yeah.
he knows how I feel about that.
Yeah. So one other point I want to make, or I'd like to make, is that We haven't done a lot of water main replacements in recent years because we're under an administrative consent order from Mass DEP to tackle certain projects throughout the water supply, treatment, and distribution systems. And because of that administrative consent order, the water mains themselves have become a relatively low priority compared to those items. Basically, DEP is saying you have to do these things, otherwise you're in big trouble. And we don't want to end up with a full-blown consent decree like we have on the wastewater side. So we've been aggressively tackling those obligations first before we get back into the water main replacements. So as we're going through this rate study, we're including the need to replace those water mains and address any of those other languishing administrative consent order items. So the goal of this rate study is to make sure that we're not in a situation where we're leaving ourselves without the funding to do those water main replacements every year on a regular schedule.
Okay, I get no problem.
Just because Chief, did you have a?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
So when we go to redo the water system on Main Street, are you saying that we're going to be removing the blacktop low pressure hydrant system from Main Street?
I'm not exactly sure which pressure zone John's planning to remove. I believe it is the low pressure zone. So it'll only be the high pressure that serves that area. And I want to double check, make sure I have my facts right before I give you a definitive on that, but that's what we did on Cushing Street. We replaced the two mains there with a single high pressure line.
Just one.
It'll be just one. And one of the co-benefits, I guess we haven't even discussed, is firefighting ability and fire flows. So making sure that our mains are in good condition, they're not tuberculated down to low cross-sectional areas and whatnot, significantly helps when we have a fire and need to dump a bunch of water on the fire to put it out.
So proceed now to Main Street. So, I mean, you've covered a lot of it as it is. Where on Main Street, from Moran Square all the way to the Upper Common, Prospect, beyond that, towards River Street?
So we're planning to tackle the Upper Common first, and then move east from there. So the plan is to tackle Upper Common basically from the church over to City Hall. And that's what we're anticipating we'll be able to do with the funding that's available. If it happens to stretch it a little bit further, that's great. We can continue a little further down Main Street. But we haven't started the design for that yet, so we don't have cost estimates. We've just got rough ballpark numbers.
So right now, it's from the church on the Upper Common to City Hall?
Correct.
And is that happening before the sewer separation?
It'll likely happen either construction at the same time or following the combined sewer separation, because we've got to go through the design phase, which is roughly a year, then we've got to bid it and all that. So assuming we have the funds tomorrow and authorize the engineering work to start, we're looking at next spring to bid out the project, so constructing it potentially in 2024, just as that combined sewer separation project is starting. So there's also an opportunity there to potentially combine the projects and bid them out as a single package. So that's one of the things that we need to evaluate and look into. It could potentially save us on the construction side, schedule-wise.
And paving's not part of that component for that section, or it is?
Paving will be part of that, assuming that Unitil is able to get in there and get their gas main work done ahead of time.
So there's gas main work, water main work, and sewer work that has to happen on Main Street.
Correct.
And my constituents who routinely complain about the condition of the pavement on Main Street in general, from especially down by Moran Square, I wanted to point this out, that there's multiple utility work that has to be done on this whole stretch first
Right.
before we dig it up. So the earliest we could probably talk about paving this whole stretch, assuming we have the funds, is 2026.
Right.
Probably.
Unfortunately.
But that's because we have to get this stuff done first. So it's
Right.
not because we're not doing it. We just, like everything else, we want to do it once.
So we coordinate very closely with Unitil so that they go in there first typically, and then we follow that with combined sewer separation, water, and then paving. So that's the goal with Main Street. So Unitil is anticipated to get in there this summer, combined sewer separation the following summer, maybe with water mains thrown in there too, either at the same time as combined sewer or the following year, and then paving thereafter.
I remember very vividly when we had the last rate increase for the water department. not the sewer, the wastewater. That's always been easy for us to justify to the residents because we were under a federal consent decree and we had no choice. We always have a choice, but we paid the price in that regard by not choosing to move on that for decades. When it comes to water main replacements, any opportunity we have to take it, even if we have to pay more. The fact that we have 80 miles of piping in this city that are probably corroded, that need to be replaced, you can't put a price tag on quality water. And we've seen other locations in the country where systems are not properly maintained, big things happen, and it upsets a lot of people. So having these two projects paid for by the federal government through our tax dollars will relieve some of that burden off of the local ratepayers, but there's still plenty of miles that we have to do. And I'm sure when we get to that point where we discuss those topics and identify the streets that will get replaced and the benefits, like the very first one we did several years ago that involved Shea Street, residents were not upset about that. You know, they get, in my experience, they're very upset about tax increases or even the sewer increase, because water is a commodity that people do not take for granted because they bathe with it, they cook with it, they clean with it. The wastewater department was always at a disadvantage because people just don't realize, you know, you hit the flush button, it's out of my control. But so when we had the last water rate study and increase, all of my constituents were not against it at all, understanding that the increase was primarily going to water main replacements. And so, we'll get into that more in detail down the road, but for seeing this on the list, long overdue, and it's just the start. We got to keep going. And you can't substitute anything for clean, quality water. And we do have very good water in this city. The water quality reports that I see as a customer, our water quality is phenomenal. I mean, there are cities and towns in the Commonwealth and the country who would kill for our water. And I think that's something to be proud of with the water department, how it's managed, and the city in general. We have very good water. We want to keep it that way. We got to take care of the pipes. So this is good.
Make a motion, we accept?
Both C and D? Both C and D?
Yeah, vote.
C and D.
Yeah,
Yep.
C and D.
So I have a motion made and seconded to accept the mayor's recommendation for project C and D, Boulder Drive water main replacement and Main Street water main replacement for $8 million. Is there any objections? Seeing none, they're accepted.
Do a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you very much, people.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. There are no objections. We are adjourned. Thank you.